Good morning, and thank you for joining me for this online service of the First Unitarian Church of ALTON, Illinois on this 23rd day of May, 2021. This is a lay-led congregation, and I'm Tracy Howe Koch, a worship associate at First UU ALTON. Thank you for joining me today. We welcome everyone to this place of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. If you have a candle or chalice at home, I invite you to join me as I light mine and say the following. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening words come from Kathleen Mateague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see there communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Our reading today is from James Baldwin. It's titled, Nothing is Fixed. For nothing is fixed, forever and forever and forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born. And we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break the faith with one another, the sea engulfs us, and the light goes out. Our story for all ages today is Beyond Every Door by Molly Hoosh Gordon. Who here knows the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Does anybody remember how Lucy discovers Narnia? Lucy looks for the perfect place to hide and opens up the door to a big wardrobe. She goes through the door and into the back of the wardrobe, and suddenly she's in a whole other world, a magical world with witches and fauns and talking beavers. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a magical world beyond every door? When Lucy opened the door to Narnia, it didn't look like anything special. It was just a boring door to a wardrobe full of clothes and coats, but across its threshold was magic. Lucy already had a foot in Narnia before she even realized what was happening. Many of the thresholds in our lives are like this. We don't know what we're crossing into another world until we're already halfway there. The door of a church takes us down a pathway of growth we might never have expected. The door of a doctor's office suddenly opens out into the life with a hard diagnosis. A restaurant door opens onto a first date and echoes forward into the relationship of a lifetime. A beloved person's door closes behind you and sends you out into the world heartbroken. The door to a library or a gym or a dance studio introduces you to a life of passion you might not have otherwise discovered. We cross these thresholds every day of our lives, for good and for ill, in joy, in sorrow, in bittersweet truth. Truly, even our own front door is a great threshold, and no matter how familiar the worlds within and without may be, given our lives' reality of constant change, every day we open the same old door again, only to step out into a world that is new since the day before. In this way, there's a new world behind every door, awaiting our discovery if we only encounter it as such. Today's message is Riding the Waves by Christine Robinson. I chose this one because I felt it really resonated as we're going through this time of transition. And honestly, the difficult paths this past year has been for so many of us, and I hope you get something from it as much as I did. 10 adults face a layoff, a messy divorce, a big mistake, serious health problems, etc. You know, all the stuff of life that launches any of us into unwelcome, uncomfortable, inevitable change. 3 of those adults sail through, seemingly fine without much distress, and quickly remake their lives. 5 endure a period of misery and difficulty, find their balance and energy on some new life path, learn, grow, and recover with new insights. 1 takes longer and needs more help, but finally emerges from the times of trial. 1 never really recovers. 10 congregations confront a problem: a change in ministers, building demands, a budget deficit, employee issues, a predator among the people, a leaking roof, a beloved elder enveloped in scandal, or perhaps just a long series of deaths. Some members organize with gusto to do what needs to be done. Some become mired in controversy and blame, gossip and meanness, and don't ever really resolve the problem. Some lose heart completely and never recover. The difference between these 10 people or congregations probably don't have much to do with the degree of disruption from change, or how devastating the mistake, how serious the illness, how big the deficit, or how difficult the loss. The difference between those who thrive after difficult, unwelcome changes and those who continue to struggle has much more to do with the individual or group skill set, which help produce the quality called resilience. More than a few of us have been capitulated into an unwelcome, uncomfortable time of change by economic conditions and/or the challenges we experience as our health shifts as we and our parents grow older, as children and spouses and relationships endure difficulties. Our lives are a succession of changes, incremental and disruptive, happy and miserable, and we have to cope, learn, adapt, and let go, over and over and over. Nor do those changes come politely at the predictable and manageable rate of, say, 1 per year. That would be awesome. But rather pile up on each other quite unfairly. It's a good thing that most of us manage to scrape up enough resilience to deal with many demanding dynamics, more or less as they come. In the end, you don't get out of childhood without developing a fair number of skills of resilience. Every single one of us, in a monument to the human ability to cope with change, tragedy, social ills, crisis, growth, aging, happiness, grief, turns of fortune, and hosts of other challenges. You are a resilient person. But you may not feel resilient enough to cope with aging, family changes, and an uncertain economy, for instance. Or you may not feel resilient enough to handle the demands of a changing job circumstances year after year. You may wonder how to guarantee that you'll bounce back from health problems or relationship changes, or just the normal slings and arrows of life. You may be aware of how much you have weathered, but wonder what is in store for the future. And you'd be right to wonder. We can pretty much guarantee that much is in store for the future, yours and everyone else's. We're all like ducks on the heaving Atlantic, and while we can smooth our feathers to keep them in top condition and peer at the sky to discern changes in the weather, mostly we ride waves which we only partly understand, buoyed by forces we can feel but not control. And mostly, we enjoy the ride anyway. But there are things we can do and ways we can live to enhance our resilience, our ability to bounce back after disruptions and adjust to change. There are things that we can do to be of assistance to others, and ways we can help the children in our care to develop their ability to bounce back. There are qualities of group life, too, that enhance resilience, such as open communication, steady leadership, well-articulated goals, which is a challenge sometimes, care for individuals, and attention to mission, congruence between authority and responsibility, that sort of thing. Such shared habits are a kind of basic hygiene that can help communities stay strong and elastic. The equivalent for individuals include things you've heard about many times. Good mental health and physical health. It's about eating well, exercising, getting your checkups, about getting out in the nature, tending our spiritual lives, and developing networks of family, friends, and community. We know these things, and we relearn how important they are with every crisis in our lives. But it's so easy when things are going well to get too busy to do this work. Often people say, when they get to the other side of a crisis, that the silver lining in the cloud was how they were reminded about the importance of those resilience-building practices. An important part of our ability to recover from extreme change or stress in the community that enfolds us. That points to one of the reasons World War II vets seem to do better as a group reintegrating into civilian life than Vietnam War vets. World War II vets returned to a society that was in a healthier place, where their experiences were honored, where wartime sacrifices had been widely shared, including by civilians, and where there were resources available to retool their lives. In contrast, Vietnam vets returned to significant chaos, lack of recognition, and disruptive inflation. They were surrounded by things that were out of their control. If they also struggled with chaotic families, were not inclined to become part of a religious or civic group, community, or had no friends, their innate resilience was often overcome. There's another aspect to the issue of how relationships affect resilience. Researchers who worked with children who grow up in situations of significant social distress suggest that the one kid on the block who goes off to college and makes a major success of herself had something that the other kids, for whatever reason, didn't have. She had someone in her life who gave her the message that she was special, loved, or gifted. This someone was usually not a parent. They studied a group of kids whose circumstances tended to include parents who were too beaten down to pay them much attention. The person who made a kid feel like their life was worth something was often a teacher, a neighbor, a coach, or a more distant relative like an aunt or a grandfather. That is to say, it was somebody like you and like me. Somebody around you may need to know that they are special and worthy, and with a little caring attention, you might just make a real impact in their life. Another point worth noting is that the kids from these challenging situations who thrived seemed to be able to collect sponsors. They knew how to ask for help, how much help they could appropriately ask for, and how to express gratitude for that help. Therefore, people reached out to them and gave them the extra helping hand. I see this sponsor effect at work all around me. It's not just in young people and in folks whose challenges are very ordinary. There are some people who get all the help they need and who leave those who help them feeling glad they did. There are skills involved in this kind of outreach, and skills we should cultivate in ourselves and which we can help our children acquire. But asking for help is hard for many of us. We UUs tend to be rugged individualist types. The same values that sent some of us out of our childhood phase looking for religious answers that made more sense to us also tend to make us pretty resistant to accepting help or trying out others' answers for ourselves. We are often willing to offer our shoulder for others to cry on, but are much less willing to be seen at our most discouraged. I know that's true for me. However, we are more resilient in the long run if we find appropriate ways to ask for help. We all need this. When our kids see us doing this, it is easier for them to develop this life skill as well. Another thing that researchers have learned about resilient people is that their lives are authentic to their innermost values. When we're not authentic, we have an especially hard time with change and crisis, because we have to manage both our real feelings and the mask we wear to protect us from the world. Institutions true to their core mission are much more resilient than those who have drifted away from purpose. I got an email recently from a friend who has gone into search for a new congregation because the one she currently serves, much as she loves them, is more interested in curating their past than living their present or their future. Curating the past might have been an appropriate mission for a history museum, but it will weaken a church because it is so far from what a church really is for. People and institutions whose energy is inordinately invested in things outside of themselves, like their authority, status symbols, physical appearance, or buildings, have a harder time dealing with life's flows than those who know themselves to be inwardly sturdy, persons of integrity, or in loving communities. Those qualities are much less subject to erosions of life than automobiles, jobs, or physical beauty. The ability to think for oneself, to reflect independently, to go against the crowd when necessary is often a part of resilience. The duck who thinks he's a swan has much more a difficult time balancing in the waves than duck who knows he is a duck. Resilient people are willing to learn from their problems, crises, and mistakes. And that learning not only enhances their life skill set, it gives any predicament a positive place in their life story. The person who can say, I lost my entire inheritance and had to learn a marketable skill, or my partner left me and I was forced to realize how selfish I had been and why, that's a person who not only stayed afloat in a storm, but who has learned how to swim. For resilience is also related to some of our core beliefs about life. For instance, those who believe that good people are rewarded with riches are in for an especially hard time when things don't go well for them economically. Not only do they have to pinch pennies, they also have to ask themselves, what did they do wrong to deserve this downturn? It doubles the pain. And sorting out one's theology as well as one's finances can take a long time. It is much better in good times and in bad to cultivate a sense of gratitude for for what we have, and confidence in our ability to manage whatever comes. Another belief that helps us survive adversity is a willingness to be flexible in the midst of change. The Tao reminds us to go with the flow and stay pliable. What is rigid is often dead. Finally, resilience is related to having a purpose beyond oneself and a large enough view of life to see one's situation fitting into a larger scheme. Cultivating those two items are the tasks of one's spiritual life, and we have a variety of ways of doing that. You might think of the spiritual life as rooted in being a child of God or the universe, or as springing from part of the human race, each member with inherent worth and dignity. You might think of your great purpose as growing in love and service, or raising a child, or adding to the store of human knowledge. However you conceive of your life's purpose, your belief and intentional living are important to your resilience. Worship, meditation, prayer, and reflection are practices that help us honor our striving while recognizing that our ultimate values are not at risk. This may be, most of all, what helps us recover from the large outrages and little blows to our hopes and intentions that seem to come with life. You were born to live. You came out of this world and into this world to enjoy creation and to contribute to it. If you were raised in a Unitarian Universalist home, perhaps you were dedicated to a life of love and service for and among your fellow human beings. If you weren't, perhaps you'd like to adopt that dedication anyway, as one set of watchwords for life on the heaving ocean. You may ask the goddess for the serenity to accept the things you cannot change. You may look to the example of Jesus for the courage to change the things you can. You may simply rely on accumulated human wisdom for the cues you need to discern the difference. But attention to that spiritual part of your life and its meaning is vital to your resilience. Even if you feel presently battered by some storm, you have ridden the waves of life successfully, resiliently, with a little help from our friends, our faith, and our basic habits of self-care, with the discipline to live out our values, ask for help when we need it, and tend to our communities and relationships, we mostly manage to be resilient enough to ride even the big waves of change that are part of everyday life. If we are wise and lucky, we'll also notice the glory of the storms and enjoy the thrill of the ride, and know ourselves finally safe in the boundless and beautiful sea. So may it be. As we approach the time for our offering, give what you will, for you are generous people. I invite you to either mail your offering to First Unitarian offices or use the Givelify app. Doing so will help us meet our financial responsibility to you at the end of the year. This morning's offering will be sincerely and gratefully received. May it be lovingly given. Please join me in our offering prayer, which is projected. May this offering equip us to inspire love and to seek justice. I encourage everyone to be on the lookout for emails from the church office. They are the best way to keep up to date on announcements and updates on First UU ALTON. You may also check our website, newsletter, and Facebook page. Please join me as we extinguish our chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are the keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words are Spirit of the Pioneer by Melvin Hoover. We can't change the past. We can learn from it and we can build on it. We can't control the future, but we can shape it and enhance it and the possibilities for our children and our grandchildren. We can't discern in the present the fullness of our actions and their impact, but we can be pioneers in our time exploring fully the crevices and cracks where knowledge and new insights might be found. We can explore our spectrum of relationships and confront our complacency and certainty about the way things are. We can face ourselves in our entirety, to understand our pain, to feel the tears, to listen to our frustration and confusion, and to discover new capacities and capabilities that will empower and transform us. In the spirit of the pioneer, let us go forth.